Okay, you're live.
Morning. Welcome to the Warwick School Committee virtual meeting for Friday, November 13th, 2020. Pursuant to Executive Order number 2005, issued by the Governor of the State of Rhode Island, meeting will be conducted by electronic communications only. Members of the public wishing to access the meeting may do so at https://youtu.be/174 UDIBZ1TL. At this time, I call to order. Please stand for the pledge. Judy, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
Sure. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time, we'll call for public comment. Taylor?
Yes, Madam Chair, this morning, it looks like we have about 10 public comments.
Oh,
First up, from Brian Morse. He says, the HEPA filters are in and kids are still falling behind with distance learning. The parent surveys were sent out and the results show that parents want students back in school. There is no excuse for not bringing the elementary students back in school 4 days a week for in-person learning. If you are a member of the school committee and you are not looking for solutions to this problem, then you should step down immediately. Clearly, Mr. Tessa asks the right questions and understands the harm distance learning is causing the children mentally in the Warwick School District. Mr. Adams, Ms. Cobden, and Mr. Cornell, every time the experts in the superintendent's office come up with a good plan on how to get these kids back in school, you act a roadblock to their progress. The three of you have offered no solutions. You focus your attention on ridiculous waste of time questions about why you weren't included in a survey. I can easily answer this question for you. You weren't included in the survey because none of you are parents of children suffering in the Warwick School District. Stop finding issues with the hard work the superintendent's office is completing. The three of you are in way over your head. It is time to focus on getting the children back in school. The unprofessional outburst that I have witnessed over several meetings from the three of you is an embarrassment to the Warwick schools. I don't believe any of you are a doctor or medical professional. Stop trying to make decisions based on medical reasons. Make decisions based on educational needs of the students in the Warwick School District. That is your job. If you can't handle the decisions to get elementary kids back in school and start focusing on getting high school, middle school students back, then step down and let someone else make the decision. Next up, from Allison Palm. I don't think you should be sending our kids back to school 4 days a week. It would be an irresponsible thing to do to our kids, teachers, and community. COVID cases have been steadily increasing every day. There were over 900 cases today. You're talking about sending them 4 days a week right before one of the busiest holidays of the year for travel. Even though not everyone will travel, I suspect there will still be a huge population of people traveling for Thanksgiving. That would lead to a huge uptick in cases in just a few short weeks. Sending them back 4 days would make the spread even worse. Keep the classes small. Keep it 2 days a week. Wait until the numbers start going down again to even think about sending our kids back 4 days a week. Thank you. Next up, from Sari Palumbo. I would like to ask the committee to please reconsider sending students back for a 4-day school week, replacing the hybrid plan we have in place now. Cases are spiking all over the country, including in our state, at a rate that is frightening. This does not seem like the right time to think about increasing the number of children in the classroom. I realize that we have the option to pull our children out and do full distance learning, but removing the hybrid plan also removes our option to have our children get any in-person instruction at all if we aren't comfortable with the full in-person plan. While I would love to see my child in school 5 days a week and enjoying a normal school year, we are living through a pandemic that is worsening by the day. I would ask the committee to please table this plan until cases are back under better control for the safety of students, teachers, and their families. Thank you. Next up, we have Amy Frank. As a teacher assistant, I work with students closely. With only 5 students right now, we have filled our room at Vets. We will be more crowded when we get back to CH. If we will struggle with social distancing with 5 students, how on earth will you fit 20 plus students every day in a regular classroom? Remove closet partitions. With underlying medical conditions, I would never work in a petri dish like that. Next up, from Patricia Mercurio. I want to start off by saying that I only write letters when I think it is important to have my voice heard and stand up for others. My first point I would like to make is I believe every school committee member has a right to speak and have their voice heard without being demeaned by another. It is with all opinions and working together we create something wonderful. My second point is about the teacher survey that you spoke about at your last 2 meetings. Here's why the survey is so important. Teachers are the front line. They create these special bonds with their students and parents. They are educated professionals with valuable information that could help you and the administration put Warwick back on the educational map where it belongs. My third point, we need to remember these teachers are humans. Humans thrive on connections and relationships. Building relationships with your clients, students, employees, teachers, and board or CEO, parents, is an integral part of creating a successful business model. If you think of a school as a business, then you must apply the same rules. My last point, I am a teacher, but this is my second career. I have a background in design, construction, business, and management. I have always felt like I could handle anything that was thrown at me, working my way up from an intern to management, helping to run an international design firm. However, this is the first time I don't have a life jacket and feel that without relationships with you and the administration, I will drown. I love my job, my students, and my parents, but we need help. Let's do something wonderful for the students and parents of Warwick and create a new path. Sincerely, a dedicated 20-year employee of the Warwick School Department, Patricia Mercurio. Next up, Thomas Doyle. If you have not watched Dr. Laura Foreman's speech, which aired during Governor Raimondo's most recent press conference, November 12th, 2020, I urge you to do so before voting to open another school and have more children attend elementary schools throughout the week. Governor Raimondo admitted during this press conference that schools are considered, quote, high risk, in reference to prioritizing a vaccine rollout. Why would school staff be in phase 2 and be considered, quote, high risk if students are not in a place where the virus spreads? Before you dismiss teachers as being, quote, afraid or, quote, scared, please watch Dr. Foreman's speech. Before you open up other opportunities for this virus to spread throughout our community, please watch Dr. Foreman's speech. It is clear that contact tracing and testing offered by the Rhode Island Department of Health is not effective. Is distance learning optimal? No. But based on Dr. Foreman's speech, short-term and long-term risks of contracting COVID certainly outweigh the setbacks associated with distance learning. I also recommend that you listen to Dr. Foreman's questions and answer period at the end of the press conference, specific to adolescents and younger adults now being hospitalized. Next, Katie Mulligan. Dear School Committee, thank you for hearing my comments. I am writing in support of a 4-day in-person learning for elementary school students. This is the moment that the district purchased air filters for. Our classrooms and schools are ready for students. This is not much more that I can say, except that the time has now come to bring our students back to school. I do realize we are currently seeing a rise in cases. Still, I feel our schools are well prepared to mitigate the risks to everyone in the school building. It is true that classrooms may have to quarantine once they are back full in person, but they will soon return to school for in-person learning, which is more than we are giving our students right now. I understand the weight of the decision that you are facing today. There is a burden either way. One way for the risk that COVID brings, the other for the risk that not being in school brings. I leave you with this. This is what you have spent months preparing for. This is what all of your time has gone towards, to get students back in school in person. It is time to bring all of that hard work to fruition. Sincerely, Katie Mulligan. Next up, Sarah Neal. During Tuesday's meeting, Ms. Danbrook suggested coming up with a timeline to return elementary students for in-person learning 4 days a week, and Mr. Testa asked the administration for data pertaining to educational gaps that may exist for Warwick students this year compared to years past. I wholeheartedly support both proposals, and I urge the rest of the school committee to support them too. I also want to address a few things mentioned in interactions I've had with some of you. Do any of you truly believe any of us would deliberately put our children in harm's way? Sometimes I get the impression some of you think the parents who choose to send their kids to school in person are being reckless. This couldn't be further from the truth. We are simply parents who intake all of the same information and come to a different conclusion, that with the right safety precautions, our children can resume the most effective learning method, which will always be in-person instruction. I also get the impression you think parents are exaggerating claims that DL is and always will be an inadequate substitution for in-person learning, and some of you have characterized DL as not ideal. This is a woeful understatement. Why? Because teachers had to adjust and dramatically scale back their planned lessons last spring. While it was a necessary evil at the time, we must still contend with the fact that our kids are already starting at a disadvantage this year because of this. Teachers have adapted to DL well, but it is simply not enough to overcome this growing gap. Lastly, for those school committee members who believe that they have relented enough in allowing elementary students to return to school under the hybrid model and think it's good enough, it isn't. I'm grateful to have something, but I am frustrated you haven't made real progress towards in-person learning. Your job isn't done until every Warwick student who wants to be back in the classroom. Thank you for your consideration. Next, from Sarah Salisbury. Members of the school committee and Superintendent Thornton, I'm writing to express my opinion and experience with in-person learning. I have a daughter on the ASD spectrum in First at Norwood and a son in SES at Lippert, currently at Vets. They have been attending 4 days in person, my son for almost 2 months. Everything has been handled safely and appropriately, including some COVID cases and scares. In my opinion, although cases are rising, we need to be full in person as our default. It is not being spread in schools due to compliance with mask wearing and the steps taken to increase ventilation, staggered passing in the halls, and distancing rules that are in the classroom. The teachers are doing a fabulous job. It seems things are going well. I understand as cases pop up, there may need to be closures of certain schools for a period of time, and that is the right thing to do. It is time to have our new normal while riding out this virus and have it as close to old normal as safely as possible. We need to give our kids the education, friends, and lives back. The older grades need their chance too. It has been too long of a wait for them. Seniors will not have the chance to make up for this lost time next year. Their lives are being put on hold as well as their futures. If the younger kids can comply, so can older, more independent children. And anyone that is uncomfortable should be offered the option for distance learning as well. We should all have the choice of how to educate our children and give them the best chance in recovering emotionally from this and succeeding academically in life. Thank you for your time, Sarah Salisbury. Next, we have Darlene Netco, President, Warwick Teachers Union. I urge you to halt the November 18th reopening of Vets Grade 6 for the following reasons. 1, COVID-19 is resurging in Rhode Island, so now is not the time to bring teenagers back to a large school without stable pods. 2, returning Vets Grade 6 students to in-person learning and not returning Windman Grade 6 students to in-person learning is unfair and inequitable. At the Warwick School Committee meeting on October 6, Mr. Cornell spoke about this inequity, and Mr. Testa said, Mr. Cornell's concern about equity is valid. In summary, there was a discussion about the administration coming back at the next meeting with a proposal to move elementary self-contained at Vets and perhaps have space for Windman Grade 6. The next school committee meeting was October 13th. The elementary special education plan did not appear on the agenda until November 10th. Therefore, you never received the information you requested, and yet the superintendent decided to return Vets Grade 6 on November 18th. On October 6th, you voted 4-1 to return 3. On October 6th, you voted 4-1 to return grade 6 to vets on October 27th. You never authorized the superintendent to choose a new date. During the vote, Mr. Testa wanted to reserve the right of the committee to revisit the timetable. Your attorney said you would need a motion on an agenda item at a future meeting to change the timeframe. Ms. Cobden said, as long as we can amend it, because she wanted to see how K-5 went. You all wanted more information. During the vote, Ms. Cobden asked if the vote was with the amendment. Ms. Bacchus said that the motion was made with the ability to amend. At today's meeting, you need to amend our previous motion and halt the return of grade 6 because Dr. Thornton never provided any of you with any of the further information that you requested. For the above and because the superintendent misled you and went behind your backs, please halt the return of vets grade 6. And that is all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Well done. Moving on to new business. Item C, discussion action, further discussion and possible amendment to hybrid reopening of grade 6 at Veterans Middle School.
So, Madam Chair, before you start your discussion and possible action on these, I promised you some homework for today. So with Mr. Taylor's help, I'll share with you. We had a Zoom meeting with Dr. Ajit Jha from Brown. He's a national expert on this topic of schools and COVID. And so he gave us half an hour of his time. So I wanted to very quickly just highlight for you what he gave us. I made it into a note form so you can have it later if you wanted to have it. So essentially, he said, based on the data so far he's seeing, schools are not a driver of the infections. He said schools do not pose a substantial risk for those in the actual school buildings. He talked about a vaccine, and he said, certainly it'll be out in the next 6 months for most folks. But until that time, he related, we needed a strategy, even with the vaccine, how to keep schools going. So we kind of think long term. Someone did ask a question in our Zoom, should schools go DL after Thanksgiving? That's something we're hearing in the state, right? He said, schools should be the first to open and the last to close. He said, we may get to that full DL time, but we're not there just yet. And he said, really, there's not much evidence that schools are spreaders. If you can scroll up, Ms. Stanbrook, a little bit. Another question was asked. Okay, and I'm sorry, go down a little bit. Okay, thank you. So next question was asked, is there evidence of spread adult to adult, student to adult, et cetera? He said, really, in all the research he's seeing, there's minimal evidence of spreading in schools. There just isn't. Another question asked, is going to school a high-risk activity? That's a general question. He said, no. He said, the high caseload states like Florida and Georgia, for example, there's still no large outbreaks in schools. The outbreaks in schools are coming from kids getting together outside of school. And that's the same whether you're in DL or whether you're in school. Kids are getting together still, unfortunately, and spreading it after hours. He really talked about flexibility in schools. He said, consider what you cannot do for the next 6 months. He gave an example, art class. Maybe the kids are in the room with an adult, a teacher assistant, let's say, and the art teacher is remote, like a Bob Ross type situation, if you can picture that. So he said, be creative and think what you can do without. He did say schools may be the safest place during this pandemic because it's a controlled environment. We talked about classrooms and spacing. He said there's no perfect distance. Some say 3 feet, some are at 6 feet. He said ventilation and mask wearing is the key. He did worry about hallways and assembly areas. That's his concern as he's seeing what's happening around the country. He talked about what he's learned in the last 4 months. He said most of the spread is from not wearing a mask, being packed in an indoor space. We asked him at one point, what about the idea out there now in the country of having a 4 to 6 week shutdown to have a reset, right? And he said, things will get worse over the next 4 to 6 weeks. He wanted to be clear on that. But he said, we can do better than a full lockdown. He said, don't close the parks again. The last time we closed the parks, do you recall? He said, do enforce a mask mandate in the state and nationally. He said he'd rather see restaurants and bars and casinos closed before schools. He did talk about home gatherings as still being the driver, as the governor has said. He reiterated that. He said lockdown, a full lockdown is truly a last resort. Even if you lock down, he said, you would still most likely or hopefully try to keep schools open. His last comment was just, once again, closing schools as a last resort. Much rather have indoor dining closed first. So he was quite informative. He'll be talking to us again in another few weeks, I imagine. My last homework, Madam Chair, was I did confirm with RIDE in terms of elementary and even this grade 6 conversation, only Pawtucket and Warwick are not in. Well, I should correct that. Elementary, only Pawtucket and Warwick are not in, every day, for at least 4 days. Middle school, it varies by district. Some districts are K5, some are K6. But essentially, if you're a middle school model, you're seeing districts in hybrid at a minimum. So that's my homework, Madam Chair, from Tuesday.
Thank you, Superintendent. Discussion,
Madam Chair.
Mr. Cornell?
Yeah, I can never vote for this to send vet students back and not women. It's not fair to the women students. It's just wrong. We can't do that. Like, I would only vote to send 6th grade back if both of them go back at the same time. But what you're proposing now is it's just it can't happen. And like, for example, like think of like a vet student, women student who are friends, and a vet student saying, "Hey, I get to go back to school now," and the women student says, "Well, I still have to do distance learning." It's just not right. And also, like, I do not appreciate how this all came about. Like the survey, for example, the 6th grade survey, none of us on the school committee knew about this. Like, it was a surprise to us. We only found out when people reached out to us saying, "Hey, we received a 6th grade survey. What is this about?" Because I didn't think this was going to happen. And also, I don't appreciate how you took a vote a few weeks ago regarding the vets 6th grade, which was not to open the schools. It was just to further address the issue. And I know I voted against that because I thought that women had issues with women not going back, and vets going back. But however, that vote was taken completely out of connotation. We didn't authorize you to go forward with this. And if we didn't have this meeting today, you would have opened the schools next week. And it's just not right. And I'm very unhappy how this all came about. And I'm not going to vote. I'm certainly not going to vote to send vets kids back and not women kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Mr. Testa, please.
Thank you. Couple of things. Number one, if we go back to the October 6th agenda, discussion action, hybrid reopening of grade 6 at Veterans Middle School. I don't think there's anything vague about that. That was what the motion was. And I did go back again and watch the pertinent sections of that meeting. And what we voted on, the motion on the table was that motion. We discussed a lot of other stuff. I said about the possibility, I believe I asked Dr. Thornton about if all the elementary programs were out, would there be room for women students to be sent to vets as well, so we could do all of grade 6. And I believe you said once the elementaries are moved out and we figured out what space would be available for vets grade 6, we could look at women grade 6. And there was a bunch of other discussion about, I think I asked for pros and cons and whatnot. So perhaps the problem lies with us in our process, because the only thing that was voted on was that measure as originally submitted to the agenda. None of us made motions to amend it in any way. We talked a lot, but we never amended it. So I guess going forward, I'd say maybe we should all be more conscious of that, all of us, because none of us amended anything. We just said, give us more information later. So that said, I'm not against a hybrid model for vets grade 6. At the October 6th meeting, Mr. Cornell, I said I shared your issue with equity. And I don't think it's inequitable if, for instance, just for the sake of discussion, that the vets kids went in on X date, and then a week or two later, the women kids go in. I don't believe that's inequitable. We did that with the special ed programs and some of the wealth people. the Welk families, not all Welk families went back. So that same inequity argument holds there too. But that was a decision that we made. So I would look very strongly as to see whether or not we could put the Windman sixth graders in with vets. Now, having said that, we have to look at what kind of a timetable that Mr. McCaffrey would put together. And Mr. McCaffrey, I believe you picked the 18th, because is that the beginning of the new grading period?
Yes, it's a transition period between the first quarter and the second quarter. And for scheduling purposes, it would be ideal to make a transition at that time.
Right, and I believe at the October 6th meeting, I brought that up because I had gotten an email from a vet's teacher that said, hey, you might want to consider that, and made perfect sense to me. So if we could put Windman in, then the only mitigating concern, I think, is, okay, what's that time frame like? When are the purifiers in and installed in Windman? Right, because if that was a week, then all right, to move Windman kids to vets for a week and move them back may not make economic sense. But if we could start this on the 18th in a hybrid model, and we could fit them, ideally we could do it both on the 18th, or maybe one's the 18th, one's the 25th. And if we have another 3 weeks to a month before the purifiers are in, then it may make sense. So I think that's something that definitely needs to be considered. We would essentially address that equity issue. We get sixth graders, or the families of those sixth graders who want their kids to be in a hybrid model. We would allow them that opportunity, and we would allow families who wanted to stay in DL to continue DL. We have been in the hybrid model in the elementary schools. We have been since when we first started putting them in. And so I know at the last meeting we said, let's see how grade 5 goes, but we've already seen how grades 4, 3, 2, and 1 go. So I think this can be done. I think the 18th timeframe was made to make it a little easier. Now we do have that survey out. So my question for my colleagues would be, with respect to this agenda item, do we hold off until, say, Tuesday, because we'll start to get some, I would hope we get some significant response from those surveys. I mean, I'm open to that, but I'm just not against starting in a hybrid model, grade 6. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Testa. Ms. Cobden?
Thank you. I am not against starting sixth grade in a hybrid, but I am against letting vets start and not women. I really don't think that. I have to stick with Mr. Cornell on that. I don't think it's fair at all. If we can figure out that they can get into vets, that's fine. I think actually you, Ms. Bacchus, asked on that October 27th meeting if they could come up with a plan to do that. And we haven't seen anything like that. And I think that's something that needs to be done. It needs to be done fast if we want to start this. But I think women has to be included to some capacity at this. And I just don't know how we're supposed to explain it to our constituents that, yeah, we get to put these kids in, but we're not going to put your kids in. It's not fair. And, we can make up 100 scenarios on why it's not fair, but it is not an equitable education for sixth graders to on one side of the city to start and the others don't. But I'm not against it. I just, I too was a little bit taken when I heard the survey went out, because I didn't think we voted to pick a date at all, nor did I know there was a date picked until I started receiving letters that were sent to parents and teachers via email. And it was a little bit uncomfortable because I felt like the school committee was completely left out of that. And I was under the impression that we were going to revisit it. So, like I said, I'm all for bringing them back for hybrid, but we have to do the same for Windman. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cobden. First, I was very disturbed by last Thursday's Warwick Beacon article, wherein Mrs. Centracchio talked about going back and everything. That was completely inappropriate. She didn't have permission that I know of, from what I've been told. She didn't have permission to speak to the press. The committee knew nothing. She also didn't have, as far as I know, permission to send out letters saying that the sixth graders would be going back. Superintendent, correct me if I'm wrong. That's what I thought. So,
Madam
Well-
Chair, my mic was off. In all honesty, our understanding was you took the vote to put them back, and that's where we're moving towards. We did nothing nefarious. We, in our opinion, acted upon your vote, and that's what we've been moving. Mr. McCaffrey, in his best judgment, had the survey out there, and he picked the date, and that's what we're moving towards. No plan to hide the ball on this.
okay, well, I appreciate that. Was Mrs. Centracchio given permission to speak to the Beacon before anyone in the committee had been told anything? Because we were never told anything.
Yeah, once again, I'll have to check the record, but it's my understanding and recollection that Ms. Bowen communicated with you in some way, text format, of our progress, but I can go back and check that, because typically that's what we would do. We would let you know, but Mr. McCaffrey picked the 18th because that was the natural time frame. I was first pushing Mr. McCaffrey for November 5th, but he advocated, I think, well, to say it's the 18th. And my recollection is we did communicate with the committee in some way, but I can check that.
Can anybody from the committee say they received anything?
I absolutely did not. I started receiving things from teachers and a few parents. And I didn't know how to answer any of the emails because I felt like I was completely in the dark, and I had to start making phone calls on what is actually going on. It wasn't when we're put on the spot like that, it's very uncomfortable. Thank you.
I concur. I did not receive anything either.
My experience is similar.
Madam Chair, if I may, no, I didn't, but I'm having a little bit of a concern here that we're taking the agenda item and we're stretching
No,
what the agenda item is. That's my concern.
This is my time to talk, so I'm talking about my concerns and how I felt. So that was the.
No, understood. I'm just worried about the agenda, and you know how
Nope.
open meetings laws can be.
At this point, Mr. Testa, I think you're okay. I do want to, echo Mr. Testa's concern that we need to focus on the agenda item, which is the reopening of the grade 6 at vets.
This
But
involves
you're good.
this
Yep.
involves the opening of grade 6 and
That's correct.
lack of information
Yep.
from, first having to learn that from the Beacon newspaper, and Mrs. Centracchio did not have the authority from anyone to speak to the Beacon. So that needs to stop. Superintendent, you need to send out a memo. That needs to stop. Second of all, I think that while we did vote for that, that there was some apprehension. And if you look at or read the minutes, you understand that the committee wanted that to come back in some way, shape, or form to let us know what was going on. We probably should have amended that. And Mr. Testa was 100% correct when he said that. Should have been amended to say, come back to the committee with the plan. Because I think that all of us in this meeting today feel that it was very important to bring both Windman and vets at approximately the same time. I think we put the cart before the horse there. I have no problem if it's feasible for Windman students to come to vets. I think there's room for 2 grades. It's the biggest middle school state. I think there must be room upstairs or downstairs or somewhere for both 6th grades to return to vet safe, where we have a good air system, etc.
Yeah. Madam Chair?
I wonder, wait a minute, I wonder if in doing that, if we'd have to do a big move, or if teachers could just use what they're using at home, bring that in, and we can just put in desks for those students to sit at. Superintendent.
Here's one thought, Madam Chair. In talking to Mr. Gothberg recently, we finished, as you know, the air purifiers for elementary. We do have some purifiers still available. So we could work with Mr. Gothberg to try to purify grade 6 only at Winman, knowing that you heard from Arden a few meetings back talking about how every room can be occupied in Winman, right? As long as you have purification. So we could not at the second put Mr. Gothberg on the spot, but we could check for certainly the Tuesday meeting and get a work plan for grade 6 purifiers. So we have, I think, potentially enough for grade 6. I have to double check that.
Will you check that and get back to me? And please ask Ms. Bonang to put that on agenda for Tuesday evening.
Will do.
All right. That way we can discuss it there and hopefully make a decision. So given that may be the case, or superintendent, if that doesn't work out, if we don't have enough air purifiers, might you explore Winman 6th grade and Vet 6th grade, both going to Veterans Memorial Junior High or middle school?
Yes, we can look at that. Tell you up front, my fear would be logistics. By the time you get there, we'd almost be ready to open up Winman. So that's my fear, but we can explore it for you. I think our best bet is locating enough purifiers for grade 6 at Winman, seeing what that would take, right? But I'll do both.
But if that's not possible, then maybe if we get the desks in the room, I don't think we need tons and tons of equipment and move classrooms like we have for other things. Given that it's going to be a few weeks, I think that our teachers who are teaching can probably have, materials and things like that, and can certainly use the Chromebooks, and they'll have a Promethean board and things like that, because we have Promethean boards throughout the building. So I would move at this point, or I would plan at this point to send vets back the week after Thanksgiving. Send vets and women back. That would be, I believe, 30th. That's the Monday, so they'd come back on December 1st. Does anybody have any thoughts about that?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Cornell?
Yeah, my concern is just with the rising cases of viruses, we just don't know where we will be at that point. So I don't want to set a date and not be able to follow through. So I think we should have all the preparations ready. Dr. Thorne can get the purifiers for Winman, and we can prepare things for vets, get everything prepared. And then once we feel like they're ready, then we can take a vote to set the established date for it.
Well, I give the community some time to get ready. Hopefully parents know that if their child is sick or showing any symptoms, they shouldn't be sending them. If they send them, the kids are going home. If people go away for Thanksgiving, those children, those students have to be out of school and do distance learning or make other arrangements for 14 days. I hope everyone understands that, and please tell families that you know, and we'll repeat it again on Tuesday's meeting. But anyone who goes away, who leaves the state, or who has a crowd for their Thanksgiving dinner, which is advocated against, should be quarantining for 14 days after that. Mr. Testa, do you agree? That's the law, or that's the
Yeah, that's the guidelines.
guidelines.
I think,
So-
I think Ms. Cobden had her hand up, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Cobden, I can't see everybody because I'm on my phone. So if you want to speak, just say,
It's not, I just, I don't want to get yelled at.
No.
I just wanted to say that I would agree to that, but we need to make sure that we have the purifiers, I think, before we pick the date. We need to make sure that we have the purifiers because we don't want to, give out a false date since it's already been done.
I agree, but what I'd like to aim for is December 1st.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that. I just want to make sure that Windman is starting too, and I just want to make sure that we have the purifiers to cover that area.
And we will get that information on Tuesday. And if
Right.
we don't have the purifiers, then I'd like to hear a second option from
Absolutely. I'm 100% agree with that.
superintendent.
Madam Chair?
Superintendent,
Yes. I'm all set.
you good with that?
Yeah, we actually should, I think in short order, I'll call Mr. Frucci, Mr. Gothberg after our meeting. We'll probably have a good understanding of our count and our room count today. So I'll work on that later today.
Will you call me and let me know?
Will do.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Mr. Testa, of course.
thank you. I just want to make sure we're clear. I know Mr. Cornell had suggested getting the air purifiers in and all that, and then deciding what date to go in. I don't think, quite frankly, I think that's an unnecessary step. We already know. I think we can pick the date, and if I understand you guys said December 1st, as long as everything's in and installed, then we should just go. I would want to see another meeting to decide to go. But Mr. Gothberg, I know we had about 75 extra purifiers, and I know some of those were going to plug gaps in the elementaries. I don't know. I wouldn't want to delay that to do this. And I know the units that are coming from the state, those are different. Those are floor units, correct?
That's correct. Those are earmarked for vets.
Yeah, and they're higher capacity units too, though, right?
Yes, they are.
Right, but they're not an absolute requirement at vets either, right?
No, not with the new MERV 13 that Mr. Oliver has.
Right, so depending on, I mean, I don't think those are in until December anyway, but if there's any way that those come in earlier.
Well, I just got a call while we were starting up the meeting from RIDE, and they are available in approximately 2 weeks. We will have to go pick them up. I haven't had a chance to coordinate with anybody on this as the call just came in. But then it's just a matter of getting them into vets and rolling them in place, plugging them in and starting them up.
Okay, so then,
And as far as the count for Windman, as soon as I know exactly how many sixth grade classrooms we have, where they're located, then we can get this done.
okay, because then the other side of the coin to me would be, if there was room, since we're in a hybrid model anyway, if there was room to fit everybody at vets, right? There's no need for purifiers. So what I would suggest to my colleagues is, if there is room to put the Windman kids and the vets grade 6 at vets, we should be exploring what really has to be moved, because it would be for a relatively short period of time, I would think.
Yes.
And we could theoretically start earlier than December 1st, couldn't we? All of the physical infrastructure needs are met. Then why couldn't we start that a little earlier?
Mr. Testa, we're not going to start next week. The following week is Thanksgiving, and they're in for 1 day, and I would propose that we make that 1 day a distance learning day.
Madam Chair, I stand corrected. I had the dates wrong. I thought there was another week before Thanksgiving. I'm sorry. I just looked at my calendar when you said that.
I thought,
So,
no,
I don't like Google Calendars.
I actually kind of was, working with dates earlier. That's why. So December 1st, I think, would be the first best date for the sixth grade to return either to Windman and vets or to vets. It may be easier to just go to vets with no real necessary movements, only, they'd have to bring in desks from the auditorium or the gym rather. So, but we'll leave that up to the superintendent, Mr. Gothberg, Mr. Oliver, and certainly if you could report back to us at Tuesday's meeting as to, what it looks like we're going to be doing, that would be fantastic. Anything?
Madam Chair, Are we tabling this, or are we just going to table it to Tuesday? I'm just trying to understand if on Tuesday they come back and they say, you know what, we can get either of them done, whatever it is, that we can get all the units, we have enough into Winman, or we can do it all into vets, right? So
Yes.
ideally, that would be the night we should vote. We need to fish a cut bait night here.
Exactly. What I'm looking to do is take this until Tuesday when we have all the information before us and can make an educated decision.
Okay, thank you.
Could I make a suggestion, Madam Chair?
Certainly.
Perhaps someone wants to make a motion to just delay, because despite what I've heard here tonight, I went back and reviewed the video of the prior meeting twice. The vote of the committee was quite clear on the grade 6 to Pilgrim. If I'm understanding correctly, it's the committee's desire to delay that plan at a minimum until at least next Tuesday night, so that the administration can bring you back the additional information you've requested. So I think, in fairness to the administration, if that's the motion, and I'm kind of reading the tea leaves here, then someone should make that motion so it's clear what the directive is.
I will make that. I move that we delay the decision on grade 6 until Tuesday when we have the information from administration.
Madam Chair?
Second.
I second it.
Discussion.
So also, as part of the motion, can we just make it clear that there will be no vets or any sixth grade classes opening next week, just to solidify that, and so there's no confusion? Can we make that part of the motion?
Cornell, there is no opening of 6th grade next week.
Okay.
Yeah, that's inherent in the motion. The motion is to delay it. So anything that was part of that motion is delayed.
It's already in motion.
Do we have to make sure that the 18th is clear that we're not returning? In that
Well,
motion?
The Centrachia will have to send out a message saying that they're not going back on the 18th. Superintendent, can you make sure that happens, please?
Will do.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to call a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. 5-0. Thank you. Number 2, discussion.
4-0.
Pardon?
Madam Chair, that's
4-0.
4-0, just for the record.
Sorry. Mr. Cornell, is in dissent. Number 2, discussion.
Only 4 of us here,
No,
Karen.
wait.
There's only 4 of us here.
Yeah. So I'm in assent. but-
Cornell's voice. Never mind. See what happens when Kyle's not here. All right. Motion carries 4-0. Discussion action, number 2. K through 5. In-person learning 4 days a week. Superintendent?
Madam Chair, I think the team gave you their thinking on this last meeting. I think at this point in time, it's up to the committee to have a discussion and take an action as they see fit.
Okay. I make a motion that we return K through 5 to 4 days a week in person.
You made a motion to move this, right, Madam Chair? But your motion was, you made
My
a motion to move this. Okay, I'd
To-
second it.
K through 5 back to 4 days per week per their discretion, parents' discretion as to which they would prefer to do in person. Motion's been made and seconded.
Discussion.
Ms. Cobden?
I have a few questions before I vote on this. Have we determined, we have some classrooms, it's been brought to my attention by many, that they have tables in their classrooms. And if we're gonna have about 16 kids depending, or 17, depending on how many teachers are in the classroom, that will fluctuate by a couple. But are we prepared to like move the tables out and get desks in there so we can try to socially distance them better? Has this been looked at? I've received numerous emails from teachers saying that if they have that amount of kids in there, they're going to be sitting on top of each other on the tables.
You make a very good point, Ms. Carpenter.
So I'm just concerned about that. I mean, we need to do this as safely as possible. We don't want our kids sitting all at one table and breathing all over each other, regardless with the mask or not. You know, depending on what kind of mask somebody's wearing, there's still air that's coming out of there, and we want them as far away as possible.
Madam Chair,
Superintendent?
in terms of the space and what you're seeing around the state and the guidance is 3 to 6 feet. If you're talking about those trapezoid type tables, if you put one child on either side of that trapezoid table, that is the standard we're seeing.
I actually personally, I've seen in classrooms, like in Warwick Neck, they have round tables.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair,
Karen?
yes, to that point, Mr. Oliver and I have started going around to schools, looking at the different classrooms. And I did order extra trapezoid tables with the CARES Act money. So, and we do have desks in storage. So we would be working to make sure every classroom is, the children are able to be socially distant with guidelines 3 to 6 feet. So that's why the other night I said I did have some concerns that I need to work on, and that is one of them that I mentioned. So that's why I asked for a timeline, that I can set a timeline that I think everyone will be safe and healthy and it would work.
Thank you, Ms. Deambrook.
Now,
That
those-
was a concern of mine.
Could they sit on either end of the trapezoid table? Would that give them enough space? Ms. Lambert?
It wouldn't give them the 6 feet space, but it probably would give them the 3 foot. Mr. Oliver, can you concur with that?
Based on what we saw the other day, Ms. Stanbrook, I believe that we'll be able to make the adjustments we need to bring everybody back in accordance to the way it needs to be done.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. Ms. Stanbrook, what are you thinking for return?
Well, I'm working with Mrs. Ruggieri on staffing. We do need more building aides at this point in time. If we're bringing back more students, we do need building aides to help with arrival and dismissal, to help cover lunch, so the teachers can have their lunch. We need lunch coverage. We need recess supervision. I'm also working with Mr. Oliver to make sure we have more cleaners on hand. They're doing a great job. I was at Sherman School and a class went into the lab. And as soon as the class left, the cleaners went in and cleaned the lavatory down. Very impressed with them, but we will need some more. Also, just logistical planning with the principals. Arrival and dismissal might have to look a little different because we have, we might need more areas of the parking lots and the buildings to do arrival and dismissal for the different grade levels. But I do believe it's doable. I'm just saying I just need time to work with my staff, my principals, and my co-directors.
Believe that it could be ready for December 2nd?
I'm going to ask Ms. Ruggieri to speak to that.
We are struggling. We don't even have the building aids that we thought we would have at this point. We're still short 7 for the district. And then if we're going to add more per school, I'm imagining we would need an additional 13 after that. So we are recruiting as best we can in several locations. We've done virtual job fairs through the Chamber of Commerce. We're just not getting the applicants in. So unfortunately, I can't give you an exact timeline when I think we can fill those spots. It just depends on the people that apply for it.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Wait a minute, just a second, Mr. Corner. I would like to do a little infomercial to anybody who's watching. Please let your friends and colleagues know that we are looking for assistance. We pay $15 an hour, and you can contact the HR office or one of us, and we'll get you to the HR office if you're looking for some extra money, or it's pretty fun working around kids and stuff like that.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair, Mr. Oliver had his hand up. I don't know if you saw that.
I can only see like who's talking. I'm on the, so, Mr. Oliver.
Just wanted to let you know, the maintenance department also will need time to fill those positions that Ms. Danbrook is requesting to. Okay, thank you.
All right, so then at this point,
Madam Chair, can I speak one?
Mr. Cornell and then Mr. Cobden.
Yeah, so regarding this, first I want to ask a question, Ms. Stanbrook. So just so everyone knows, so right now we're not prepared for 4-day in-person learning. Is that correct?
At this immediate point in time, that is correct. We're not prepared, but we are working on it currently.
Okay, thank you for that information. So right now, throughout the state, like we have COVID cases are at a rise. They're actually the highest they've ever been right now. And also recently, West Warwick and Cranston schools shut down for a week to go full distance learning because of the COVID cases there. So we have to keep that in mind, especially since it seems like this has been rushed and all with these COVID cases, I don't understand why we should do it now. But now that I hear that we're not prepared for it now, like I definitely think we can't do it now. So now the idea of a time frame. My concern with the time frame is that if we like set a time frame, I just don't know if we can sustain that. Like weapon if these COVID cases continue to rise and then we have to cancel the timeline. I just don't think that would be fair to the parents to set a timeline and just cancel it on them. And so that's my concerns. And also I want to bring up, because a lot of people have been bring up surveys. Yeah, when I saw the survey, like the survey is actually very different than the last one with hybrid, because that one was overwhelmingly about like 80% was in favor of going to hybrid. However, for this one, it was only around a little bit over 50% wanted to go to 4-day in-person learning. Meanwhile, about like 40.6% voted not to do that. So that's something to keep in mind. But as of now, so as everyone heard, like, so we're not ready for 4-day in-person learning. So I just don't think we're at a point that we can vote on this right now until everything's ready. However, from what I would like to see, because in theory, I'm not against 4-day in-person learning, just how we do it in the time and when we do it. I'm going to ask the administration to prepare everything, which I'm sure I know they're already doing. So, and once everything's set up and once we're actually ready for 4-day in-person learning, then we can revisit this topic. But as for right now, as for myself, I cannot vote for this because we're not ready for it. And it's just not the time to do this at this point. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
I was up next.
Oh, sorry, apologies.
It's all right. I would just like to bring something up that when we are ready to open for full learning for K through 5, that possibly, I don't know if you'd have the principals do it or it comes from administration, but I think parents, from what I'm seeing in emails that have been sent to me and phone calls that I've received, I think they deserve to get a letter on how many kids are going to be in the class and almost get an overview of what that classroom's going to be like. Because just in one day, I received so many emails from people saying that they voted to put their kids in full time, but with the rates going up on COVID, they're nervous now and they might pull them out. But they would really want to know exactly what was going to be in the classroom and how, almost an overview of how many kids, etc. So I think that would be very helpful to our community, for the parents that are trying to make these very difficult decisions, to to receive something like that before we open. I mean, that's obviously not today, but in the future. And I also want to add, Ms. D'Amber, thank you so much for seeing the issues ahead of time, because those are the issues that I was seeing too.
Madam Chair,
Superintendent.
just two items first. Ms. Cobham, thank you for that. We can certainly communicate with parents on expectations, but I think we can tell them, it could be up to 17 students. We can't give them a firm number until the clients actually show up. We wouldn't know that number. We can say it can't be any more than. Mr. Cornell, in terms of your thinking, I would just say it's really a chicken and the egg. We as an administration need to be green lighted to actually go forward and fill the positions. We can't fill the jobs that don't exist yet. We have to get green lighted to then proceed and fill the jobs. So that's how we kind of operate. We can't move forward till you tell us to move forward.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Cornell.
Okay, so how about this? We take a motion to pretty much greenlight you to be able to do whatever you need to do to prepare for 4-day in-person learning. So that means find the jobs and all that. However, I don't think we should vote on the start date. And then once everything's prepared, once we're ready, then you can come back to us and then we can revisit this again. And also, I want to bring up that we haven't received a teacher survey yet, and that also could be insightful. So that's something also.
Mr. Cornell, Mr. Cornell, that's been sent out, and the results will be back Tuesday. But we already, I think, discussed with the superintendent that what you just said was that what we would be looking to do. Ms. Cobden, I think you make some good points. I think we need to give the parents the parameters of what it is, which I think is a maximum of 17, Superintendent.
Yes, that's our plan.
So because we don't know who'll be sending their kids, all we can say is we'll have a maximum of 17 in any classroom. Ms. Cobden?
No, I'm fine. I just think that at some point something should go out with a little bit of an overview of what the day's going to be looking like and how we're handling more kids in the school with COVID. I think it would help parents make a comfortable decision for themselves, because we have people now totally on the fence who wrote in that, oh yeah, I'm definitely putting my kids in 4, and now they're like, I'm not doing that now because of the number.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Mr. Testa?
Thank you. A couple of things. One, Mr. Cornell, I need to correct you on the 2 surveys. The first survey for elementary was, and either Dr. Taylor or Dr. Thornton can correct us. I think those respondents who wanted to go back was in the 60% range, I think. And I think the second one was 59.6. So I think it was pretty consistent both times. I don't think it was 80% said yes. But Dr. Thornton, you can correct that after I'm finished. I don't agree, Mr. Cornell, with I think you were looking to try to maybe amend the motion to vote to go forward and then vote for a start date. I think by approving this and letting the administration, Ms. Danbrook and the rest develop a plan, I think that's what we're doing, right? And a timetable. I don't think Ms. Danbrook wants to rush these kids in a week and a half. What I'm saying is I don't think they're going to develop a plan that would be high risk or anything like that. I think if anything, they're going to err on the side of caution. So I have no problem. The motion, I think, Madam Chair, is on the floor. We're in the discussion phase now, is just to start K through 5, 4 days a week. And I'm comfortable with the committee has to send a message. What does it want to do? And we're all saying we want to go 5 days. So I think we need to trust the administration to develop a plan for this. I think some things, to Ms. Cobden's point, I agree. And another thing I think we need to make clear is that if we adopt this, once the plan's in place, I think we have to, for lack of a better word, lock out those people who choose not to come in person for at least a grading period. Because we can't have this run 3 weeks and then all of a sudden, it's going well. And a parent may say, well, I want to put my child back in now, because that could throw off the balance that we have in the classrooms. Because I'm sure that as this goes forward, I think some parents may opt out as well. So I think by revisiting it at each grading period allows the administration to plan as solidly as possible. and avoid any of those things that could throw it off. Because if we get our classes balanced, and then all of a sudden you get 3 new third graders at Cedar Hill that want to come in, now your classes, you're looking at maybe a 19 or a 20, which is a problem. So I think we have to make that clear. And I think that was it. So.
Read, Mr. Testa, and most,
Okay.
most, if not many districts throughout the state are telling parents what they choose is until the end of the year.
Yeah, and I don't think that's unreasonable. I think most parents would consider that reasonable as well. So
COVID times, I think absolutely you're right.
yeah, and again, I would caution everyone to say, like, nothing's perfect, and regardless of whatever model picked, is not going to say we'll never see a case or a positive case, because we're just going to. That's just the nature of this beast. But I think if the committee is willing to signal to the community, yes, this is what we want, and they'll develop a plan, and Ms. Ruggieri, to fill those slots, it's not going to be a week to fill those slots. You're going to need time to fill those slots. And I think administration will be as flexible as possible to come up with a starting date that they think is good. And I would just say, you're going to have to, I would also ask that at every meeting we have, that we get an update on where it's at. And it should be categorized. So Ms. Ruggieri would have her piece, Ms. Danbrook would have her piece, Mr. Oliver would have his piece. So we all know, we're all updated along the road here on how it's going. So if there was something that was a major hurdle, then Ms. Danbrook could say, look, here's a major hurdle, we're kind of stymied here. And at least that's fine, but our intention is still clear. We want to keep this moving, but we don't want them to do anything silly. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Testa.
Well
said.
Madam Chair, can I just ask Mr. Hennius a question, please?
Certainly, Ms. Cobb.
Mr. Hennius, when I remember going back in the summer when we were talking about, returning back to school and all the scenarios, I spoke of putting limitations like Mr. Testa just spoke on, and I was told it was not legal, but I understand that other districts are doing it, where if you sign up for A, you have to stick with A. Sign up for B, you have to stick with B. Are we breaking the law in any way by putting those boundaries up on parents? Because I don't want to go down that route. I do know that other districts are doing it, and I was shocked because when I spoke of it, it was like, whoa, wait a minute, we can't do that.
Yeah, no, the initial thinking on that was that you shouldn't be putting parameters on it. The kids are entitled to whatever education their peers, siblings, etc. are entitled to. You are correct. A number of districts, I don't know of the exact amount, but a number of districts have put parameters on, whether it's a marking period, whether it's the end of the year. I've heard of districts doing, you'll be allowed back, but you have to give us time to work out the schedule, and you may not get your school of choice. So there are a number of different scenarios out there that different districts are doing. To my knowledge, Judy, it hasn't been, that particular issue has not been challenged at RIDE or in the courts. So districts are doing it. I think in these COVID times, I understand Mr. Testa's point, and I agree with it. I think it's reasonable.
Oh, I agree with it too. I just don't want to do anything wrong. I wanted to do that in day one.
Yeah, we talked about that. I think that
because it's just going to mess everything up in the classrooms if people are coming in and out all the time. We're going to have that with illness.
Yep. I mean, districts are doing it, and to my knowledge, it hasn't been challenged. So you certainly wouldn't be leading the way in that.
Okay, I appreciate your input. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Cornell?
Yeah, so regarding what Mr. Testa said, actually I agree. I would like to see updates every week just to see how it's going. And I believe that we should authorize administration to go forward to come up with a plan and make sure everything's ready once it goes. But however, to prevent what happened with vets, I would like to see us be given before start dates determined. I would like, once everything is, the administration has everything prepared, and once they're ready to allow this to happen, I would like them to come before us again, and then we would vote on the start date, just to avoid a whole vet situation again, because then we gave authorization and then it kind of went out of our hands.
Madam Chair, I would alter that slightly. I would
Go ahead.
have them develop a plan, and this is when they want to start. And after they come to everything with us, if we see the need to change it, then we would say no. I wouldn't want to see them do all this work. Now we schedule a special meeting, and it may seem like a distinction without a difference, but I think it is slightly different. I think as they're updating us along the way, they could say it's December 1st, and then a week later, because of a problem, it could be December 4th. So, in which case, I don't think we need to approve every single potential change that's made. I think the only thing we should do is if they come to us during the updates and say, we're good to go, we're going to do this on December 6th, I don't think that needs our approval. I think the only thing would be for us to stop it. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I agree with you. And I think that the administration understands that we're very concerned about these things and that we don't want things to happen without our knowledge. I mean, they're bright people. Anyone else? Superintendent, that's not a problem, is it?
Madam Chair?
No, Madam Chair, I think we have clear direction. My team will be meeting after this meeting to start working towards this end.
Thank you. Mr. Cornell?
Yeah, I just feel like we're going through the whole vet thing over again. I'm concerned that the whole same thing will happen. A date will be set. We won't be expecting it. And then we'll have to schedule a special meeting like today to deal with it. I just don't want us to have to go through this again. So I just don't see the problem of the administration, once they come up with their plan, to come before us and then we approve the final date, and then we'll follow through with that. And that will be the final day, first day of school.
Cornell, do you understand that we work with very bright people who understand that perhaps they did not give us the information last week? And do you understand that they wouldn't do that again? So I feel like, I don't feel like that is reasonable.
Mistakes can be done again, and like, I just want to prevent a contingency from happening, and I could just see this happening again. And although it's my hope that the administration will not do this again, and but however, I just don't want to just ensure that this doesn't happen again. Let's just put, and I just don't see the problem, because we have a meeting every week anyway for us to just authorize the starting date. I just don't see a problem with that.
Well, they'll bring it to us with a starting date, and then if we feel that they shouldn't be going back, then we'll stop it, like Mr. Testa said.
So we're voting just to stop it. Why can't we just approve it? Like, I just don't see why we can't just approve the final starting date once they determine what day it should be. If we would vote to stop it, but we didn't like it, since we're meeting every week.
We have a motion on the table to approve the plan process and to allow administration to go forward as quickly as possible to bring our kids back with the proper people in place and desks as they should be, social distancing, all of that. So I feel like Mr. Testa explained it well, and I don't want to undermine our administration. I think they get it. I think they get what we want. And I don't think it's necessary to change the motion. They will bring it to us when it's ready. And if we feel fine with it, then it's a go. And if not, then we can stop it.
Madam Chair, yeah, I'm just kind of confused, because like, if we're bringing it before us anyway, why can't we just vote to authorize it and just make that as a contingency? Like, because we're meeting anyway, and if like they'll be bringing us before us anyway, why can't we just authorize it? Like, this is not about like, this is about oversight. Like, it's not about down administration. It's just we as a school committee are supposed to have oversight to make sure that everything goes well with the school district and that our communities are properly represented and do what's best for our students. Like, it's just an oversight thing.
We're doing, and we will get weekly updates on it, Mr. Cornell. Mr. Testa?
Madam Chair, thank you. Mr. Cornell, I understand, I think I understand what you're saying, but what the motion in front of us right now is just to approve K through 5 in person for 4 days a week, period. And now they're going to develop that plan. It's going to be on every single weekly meeting that we have. We can make it a discussion action item. So every time they present a plan to us, well, Mr. Annius, the mechanics of this, I'll leave to you, but it would be a discussion item, and we can make it an action item to, I wouldn't want to make it every month that they present to us, we approve what they presented to us, because that's just silly. So I think we should get our updates, and then as part of that update will be a projected start date. And then as it gets closer to that date, we're going to have a meeting, and maybe perhaps at that meeting, we make it an action item if we'll approve the plan. If that's going to make you more comfortable, then fine. But what I don't want to see us do is have administration do all of this work, all of this lifting, and taking into account the survey results and all the mechanics that have to be done. And they say, we feel we're going to start this on December 9th. And then the 5 of us think we know better to say, no, you can't, you need to do it on the 15th. Because I don't think that would be fair to them either, especially if we've been updated all along the road. So, we're really kind of hung up on this little procedural issue. I don't think it's a big issue, because every week we're going to be discussing this. So we can always do, if something happens we don't like, we can address it at that meeting. I think we should just move this question now.
I mean, I think it's a non-issue, actually, Mr. Testa. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's crystal clear that the superintendent and the administration on a weekly, bi-monthly, whatever it is basis are going to notify the committee of what their plan is. I think exactly what you said, and just picking a random date, if the superintendent comes to the committee next week and says, here's the plan, here's what it looks like, we have everything in place, we're going to make we've made a decision to move this forward on December 1st, just picking a complete random date. Then at that point in time, if the committee, then the committee, there's no action required. However, if the committee doesn't want to use that date or wants to have a discussion on it, they can have it at that time.
Right, and I think where we would get in trouble, and I would strongly advise administration not to do this, is to at a December 3rd meeting say, this is good, we want to start December 5th. If December 5th is your start date, you should be telegraphing that to us sometime like 2 or 3 weeks before. We need to know as far out in advance how far
that seems crystal clear.
Right.
Madam Chair,
Superintendent?
to Mr. Testa's point, we'll be telegraphing you a date next week to give you a sense of it.
I know you would want to do that, Superintendent, but we really need the staffing, and we're going to have to figure out, so don't put yourself in a box.
Understood.
That's my only worry. Mr. Cornell?
Yeah, this is how I stand now. Like, I will support this resolution only if we have the contingency that we make the final vote on the start date, because I just think that's like covering everything and just preventing any further problem. And I think that'll be good for the community. So that means they know that we're going to be determining a start date, so nothing can be sent out saying, oh, this is a start date, and then having it change, and that's not good for the community. So I will support this only if there's a contingency in it that we make the final vote on the start date.
Thank you, Mr. Cornell. There's a motion on the floor. I'm going to call the vote.
Well, Madam Chair, if I make a point of order, my God, I said point of order, holy crap.
Point of order, okay, Mr. Testa.
Mr. Cornell, if you want to do that, I think you need to amend the motion that's on the floor.
Just as a point of order, I believe you called the question, Mr. Testa.
Oh, okay.
And so I think the chair is accurate in moving the vote at that point in time.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem. So, motion to return K through 5 to in-person learning 4 days per week is on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Madam Chair, I move to amend. And first, I think that needs to be seconded. first before
Mr.
it's voted on.
Cornell,
It was
are out
seconded.
of order. Mr. Hennius, please explain this to him.
My understanding is that the original motion was moved and seconded. Each of the members has had an opportunity to discuss it, and then Mr. Testa moved the question. And then the chair called for a vote on the motion, which I believe is appropriate. So the vote on the motion as it's stated.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 2-1.
Wait, I
didn't vote.
didn't hear from Ms. Cobden, so.
Okay, Ms. Cobden,
I'm kind of with Nathan. I don't think it's anything wrong on having us, having that amendment in it. I don't see anything wrong with it.
motion fails.
Correct.
Madam Chair.
Now we need to amend it, right?
Now we can,
I move to
now,
amend.
you can now.
Wait.
So now
Mr.
if
Hennius,
Mr. Cornell would like to make a motion to amend, he can make the motion to amend. That would have to be seconded. There'd have to be a vote on the amendment and then a vote on the motion as amended.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Cornell,
I move to amend, as part of your, motion to make it that we would have to vote on the final start date for the students going in.
So now that would
As part
have
of
to be
this motion.
seconded. I'm sorry,
Wait.
Nathan, I didn't mean to cut you off. That would have to be seconded and then the committee, if there's a second, the committee would then vote.
I'll second it.
So now you
Motion-
vote on the amendment, and then if the amendment passes, you vote on the motion as amended.
any discussion?
Oh, Madam Chair, I just want to understand, Mr. Hennius, all Mr. Cornell has done is say, we're going to go forward 4 days, K through 5, and that the school committee will approve the final date of that, correct?
Correct.
Final date of
What my
return.
understanding of Mr. Cornell is that nothing will happen until this comes back to the committee and they establish or approve the final date.
And was it already seconded? Judy, you seconded it,
I
right?
second it. I see no harm in it. I
Okay.
really don't.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Testa, were you and I?
Aye, yes.
Yes, okay. The ayes have it, 4-0.
So now, Madam Chair, you would just call a vote on the motion as amended.
Motion to approve. Motion as amended, K through 5, in-person learning, 5 days a week, with committee affirming the go back or start date for that 4 days a week to happen.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Cobden?
I said aye.
Oh, okay. The ayes have it. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you very much. We have a meeting. The next meeting of the Warwick School Committee is Tuesday, November 17th, 2020. Please, everyone, please wear your masks and encourage your friends and family and colleagues to do so as well. You protect not only yourself, but we protect others by doing that. There being no further business before this committee, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Have a great weekend, folks.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.